Ruth Elizabeth Baumgardner's case is considered endangered missing. She was last seen May 4th, 1937, in Delaware County, Ohio. Her date of birth is unknown, though she was considered to be 22 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was a white female and was 5'5" and 110 pounds. Her hair was blonde, and her eye color was either blue or gray. She had no known nicknames or aliases, and no distinguishing marks or features. Dentals were not available, and it is unknown if there were any fingerprint or DNA samples available. It is possible that at the time of her disappearance she was wearing a brown suit, a sport hat, and brown ghillie shoes. It is unknown as to whether or not she was wearing any jewelry, but she is believed to have been carrying an overnight case with her. Ruth was a senior at Ohio Wesleyan University, where she majored in art. She belonged to the Delta Delta Delta, or Tri-Delt, sorority and lived in Austin Hall on campus. She resided with her parents in the 2000 block of Arthur Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio, when she was not at college. She was last seen by her sorority sisters shortly after 11 p.m. on May 4th, 1937. She had her hair up in curlers and pins and was behaving normally at the time. Sometime before midnight, she said goodbye to her friends and has never been seen nor heard from again. The Tri-Delts altered campus authorities at 10:30 p.m. the following day when they realized she had not attended any of her classes. A subsequent investigation revealed that someone, probably Ruth herself, had left her dormitory room key on the back corner of an Austin Hall staircase between the second and third floors. Her new red Dodge was found parked undisturbed in its regular garage, with the keys still in the ignition. Her room was in perfect order, which was uncharacteristic of her. The alarm clock had been set for 6 a.m. and had run down, indicating that she had got up at that time on May 5th and left Austin Hall without being seen. The day she disappeared, she received 3 calls from an unidentified male. His identity remains unknown. Initially, it was believed that Ruth had suffered an amnesic episode and wandered away from campus. The theory was bolstered by several reported sightings of her in the Delaware area in the days following her disappearance. None of the sightings were confirmed. At the time she went missing, Ruth was worried about whether she would get enough credit hours to graduate in time. In the last letter she wrote to her parents, she stated that she had many things to do and did not know how she was going to do them all, and that she was very tired. Authorities investigated the possibility that Ruth left on her own accord, possibly with a boyfriend, since several of the reported sightings placed her with a young man. However, she was happily engaged to her boyfriend in Lakewood, and her friends did not believe she was seeing anyone else. There is also no evidence of foul play in her case, although a local resident living near the campus reported hearing screams between 2 and 3 a.m. on May 5th. The case was closed in 1939 at the request of her parents. Juliet Stuart Poyntz was last seen on June 4th or June 5th of 1937 and was last seen in New York City, New York. Her date of birth was November 26, 1886, and she was 50 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was a white female, and her height and weight were unknown, as well as her eye color and her hair color. She had no known aliases or nicknames, and it was unknown if she had any distinguishing marks or features. There were also no dental, no fingerprint, or no DNA records available. It is also unknown what she was wearing, if she had any jewelry, or if she had any additional personal items on her at the time of her disappearance as well. Juliet was one of the founding members of the American Communist Party. A graduate of Barnard College and Columbia University, she traveled all over the world promoting communism until she dropped out of the American Communist Party in 1934 in order to work as an agent for the OGPU, the secret police agency of the Soviet Union and predecessor of the KGB. She received intensive training in espionage and returned to the United States. In 1936, she was recalled to Moscow for debriefing to receive further instructions. But while she was there, she became disillusioned. She had been interrogated and her loyalty questioned. She had barely managed to allay suspicion before returning to the United States. Badly shaken, she quit her espionage work and openly denounced communism. She told people she was thinking about writing her memoirs. On the day she disappeared, Juliet took a phone call at her hotel from a former lover. She put on her hat and coat and walked out into the night. In her room, her clothes were neatly folded, her passport was in her drawer, and a candle was burning. She was never seen again. One of her friends, the anarchist Carlo Tresca, investigated her disappearance and concluded that an old lover had lured her out to be kidnapped and killed. In early December 1937, her lawyer reported her missing in the New York City Police Department. In her apartment at the American Women's Association clubhouse at 353 West 57th Street, she had left behind all her belongings. She also left behind a bank account containing $10,500, which had not been touched since she was last seen. She was declared legally dead on October 26, 1944. Marjorie West was last seen on May 8, 1938 in McKean County, Pennsylvania, and is considered endangered missing. Her date of birth was June 2, 1933, and if still alive today, that would make her 84 years old. However, at the time of her disappearance, she was only 4. She was a white female, had red hair, and blue eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she was believed to have been wearing a blue dress, a red hat, and a navy blue mid-length coat with the collar edged in pink. Marjorie attended a church service with her family members in Bradford, Pennsylvania during the morning hours of May 8, 1938. Her parents decided to have a Mother's Day picnic afterward in the White Gravel area, which was a 40-minute drive from Bradford. They drove south along U.S. Route 219, following an old railroad grade from Custer City to Marshburg, Pennsylvania. The Wests entered the White Gravel area from Chapel Fork Road in McKean County. Marjorie picked wildflowers with her older sister, Dorothy, later during the day. Dorothy left Marjorie alone while she spoke with their mother at approximately 1500. Marjorie disappeared by the time her sister returned to the area. She has never been heard from again. The girl's mother called the police after initial search of the area. By family members produced no evidence as to Marjorie's whereabouts. Police searched with bloodhounds around the rock and down to the road where the scent trail stopped. There, near the road where the violets that Marjorie had picked earlier were found. Marjorie's case still remains unsolved to this day. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact the Mountain Laurel Review at 814-362-5281. That's 814-362-5281. Or you may also call 814-368-1463. That's 814-368-1463. Mary Lazara was last seen about 1939 in Gary Lake County, Indiana. Her date of birth was March 15, 1915, and was about 24 years old at the time of her disappearance. However, the photo on the right does show her age progressed. She was believed to be a white female, though her height and weight were unknown. She had black hair, brown eyes, and no distinguishing marks or features. There were no dental, nor fingerprint, nor DNA records available. It is unknown what clothing, what jewelry, or if she had any personal items on her at all at the time of her disappearance. She was last seen leaving for work in Gary, Indiana, somewhere in 1939. She never returned home or was ever heard from again, and there is no record of her in the FBI database. If you have any information about her case, you are asked to call Lauren Wickovic at 815-258-6603. That's 815-258-6603. Lelia Lewis Bryan was last seen May 10, 1941, and is considered endangered missing. She was last seen at the Carolina Beach, Bladen County in North Carolina. Her date of birth is unknown, though she was 36 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was a white female who was 5'7" and somewhere between 120 and 125 pounds. She had dark hair and dark eyes, and it was unknown if she went by any aliases or nicknames. It was also unknown if she had any distinguishing marks or features. There is also unknown dental records, unknown fingerprints, and unknown DNA records available. At the time of her disappearance, it is believed she was wearing a summer print dress, brown and white shoes, and a green turban. It is unknown if she had any jewelry or if she had any other additional personal items with her. Lelia Lewis Bryan and her 4-year-old daughter, Mary Rachel, were last seen on May 10, 1941. A native of Baldenboro, Bryan and her husband, E.C. Eddie Bryan, lived at Carolina Beach. The couple worked for the Atlantic Coastline Railroad. Lelia had been enrolled in nursing school when the couple became engaged and were married. Bryan got her an office job at the railroad. Lelia's mother disapproved of the marriage as Eddie was divorced. The weekend she disappeared, Mary Rachel and Lelia were headed for Beldenboro to visit her family. Because of the enmity between her husband and mother, Eddie wasn't accompanying Lelia and Mary Rachel. She planned to leave either Friday or Saturday, possibly riding with her brother Barry Lewis. Mary Rachel's Sunday shoes were polished, and several rings Lelia always wore were found at the Raleigh Street home. The rings were Lelia's favorites, and she rarely left home without them. According to friends, on May 10, 1941, Eddie Bryan told investigators that Lelia said she was driving to a store a few blocks from their home. Bryan later told investigators that Mary Rachel asked to ride along. Where Lelia went shopping that evening, if she did, has never been discovered. Neither mother nor child was ever seen again. Barry Lewis went to Carolina Beach to visit his sister around 2100 on May 10, 1941. Lewis awakened Bryan, who told his brother-in-law that Lelia had gone to the store. Lewis apparently drove around the beach for an hour or so, looking for Lelia and Mary Rachel, figuring he must have somehow missed them. He returned to the Bryan home, located in the 200 block of North Raleigh Avenue. Lelia Bryan's 1935 Ford coupe was still missing. Husband, brother, or both called police. Bryan told police he was making concrete forms in the couple's garage when Lelia had come home around 1830 and made supper. Lelia and Mary Rachel had spent the afternoon on the beach. Local attention was intense as Lelia's family was well liked and widely known in the Beldenboro area. Searchers were combing the island and the surrounding areas for any clue of Lelia, Mary Rachel, or the Ford coupe. Professional drivers searched areas where a car could be driven into the Cape Fear River snows cut and the Intercoastal Waterway. Officers visited gas stations from 50 to 100 miles away, since Eddie Bryan told investigators he didn't think the Ford had more than half a tank of gasoline when Lelia left. At the request of the newspaper, officers in Pinellas, Florida began searching for the woman when the pair was reported spotted nearby. Officers questioned some of Eddie Bryan's family who lived in the area, but no clues were located. Stories and advertisements were placed in newspapers across the country as leads and suspected sightings were checked and rechecked. Officers thought they had a break after that summer when someone found a piece of automobile windshield in Snow's Cut, a large canal connecting the Cape Fear River and the Intercoastal Waterway north of Carolina Beach. It was just a few feet offshore, out from a little beach. It was maybe 18 inches of water at the outside and had been there for a while. Investigators determined the glass could have come from a 1935 Ford, but couldn't be sure. The windshield fragment was sent to the SBI lab in Raleigh, but as the case grew cold over the years, the glass disappeared. Investigators never found sufficient evidence to suggest anyone killed Lelia and Mary Rachel. No one was ever charged, nor was there an incident by friends or family that she had ever concerned suicide. If you have any information about this case, whether it's about Lelia or Mary Rachel, you are asked to contact the NC State Bureau of Investigation.